Good afternoon, everybody. Firstly, on behalf of Marcus Evans, a very warm welcome to the 15th anniversary of the European Pensions and Investment Summit. My name is Jason Davies. I'm the Chief Client Officer for Marcus Evans. And the purpose of this session is to prepare you for what's going to happen over the next 3 days in terms of the meetings and give you a little bit of an insight from what our investors expect and a few tips to help you maximize the opportunity. So what I'd like to do is hand over to Todd, but before I do so, I'd like to introduce you to the panel of distinguished gentlemen at the front here. On the far side there is Bernard Walsh, who's attended the European Pension Summit 6 times. He's from the Bank of Ireland Life. Welcome, Bernard. In the middle, we have David Clare from Barnett Waddingham. He's attended 4 times, so welcome, David. Thank you very much. And at the end here next to me, Herr Horace, who's attended 3 times the European Pensions and Investment Summit. And of course, our moderator for the session is Todd Benjamin. So over to you, Todd.
Thank you so much. Where I want to begin really is talking about access, because you're all here because you will get access, of course, to all these type of people here. But I want to begin by how difficult is it for asset managers that don't know you to get your attention in the office? Bernard. Yeah.
It's not easy. We all have very busy lives. I think the more successful experience that I've had following the conference, the summit, has been where the sponsor sends on an email to follow up on certain points, specific points that we've raised. Not the generic, here's all our bump all over again, but some specific points that were raised at the meetings that were here.
Yeah. Harder than it should be. I think there's a balance in the role that I do, because I spend time seeing clients and also coming here to identify opportunities, but I would agree, be very specific. I think coming along and just saying we can do everything in every area, whatever you want, we get that all the time from lots and lots of managers. So being very specific, very clear as to what you want to get over.
Yeah, I want to get to specifics in a minute, but really how difficult is it for asset managers to get to you, Gareth, if you're in your office?
Very difficult.
Yeah.
Well, at the moment, we found that the whole process became a little bit too technical. So you'll end up with the large names, and at a certain moment you can't talk to 100 asset managers for one mandate. So you have your filters, etc., and then automatically becomes very difficult for those not on the list to talk to you. And one of the reasons is that why we're here is simply to broaden our ideas with other managers.
Now, so what advantage does a summit like this offer you, Bernard?
I kind of look at it as a little bit like a retreat, where you're away from the office for a few days. You can immerse yourself in listening to the economists we heard earlier on, sharing their views of the world, and the view from Dublin might be somewhat different to the view from London or from other parts of the world. So I think that's the first thing, is that you can totally immerse yourself in it when you're here. You can also engage with people both in the formal one-to-one environment, but also during meals and in the networking coffee breaks as well. So you can have a lot of different types of interactions.
The opportunity for me is to actually see people for the very first time. I tend not to want to see managers that I've already got a relationship with. So it very much is a tremendous opportunity to see 15, 16 people I may not have seen before. But most of these will be the first ever meeting.
And also to get some new ideas, possibly.
And that is, it's seeing new people, it's getting new ideas, but it's at the very beginning of a process. And we're going to come to that later.
Well, since we are moving away from the traditional asset classes, we really have to get our focus much broader. And here it gives you the opportunity to talk to a lot of asset managers who have different ideas and which are very helpful in our process.
Now, sometimes, the solution providers can come with big slide packs and start to go through a lot of those slides. Let's talk about the process a bit, because how important is it that they really listen to you?
It's absolutely crucial and rare. So it's a bad combination. Generally, it starts off with the asset manager starts off by telling us all about their business and all about how many awards they've won and that they're number 1 over 3 years and 2 days. A lot of that, rather than discussing what we're looking for.
David, would you agree?
At this, in these one-to-one meetings, you shouldn't be listening to me at all.
Not listening to you at all?
Not at all, because I shouldn't be doing any of the talking. If you've asked to see me, you should have already researched what I do, the firm that I represent. You got 25 minutes. It will be the first meeting I've had. If you ask me lots of questions, fine, it will make that 25 minutes very easy, because I'll just talk about what I do, but then you're missing a great opportunity. I'm expecting you at this first meeting to do all the talking and then listening to me afterwards.
So you expect them to do all the talking?
The vast majority of the talking.
See, but this is interesting. So everyone has a slightly different approach. So, Gare, is it best maybe at the beginning to establish what you really want versus what they want to do and try and establish some common ground?
Well, in the first place, we have requested to see them. I mean, we see the whole list and we fill out names that of asset managers you want to see. So there must be at least an initial interest from my side. I don't like so much that you've had on quite some occasions that they run down a complete presentation. Well, they could have sent me the presentation. I think for me, but everybody's different. For me, if they just have the highlights and then we go into a discussion, it would be for me much more interesting, because we're not going to sign here a contract anyway. So there will be more meetings if we go on.
But how do you know if someone is really listening to you and your needs? Because oftentimes people think they're hearing your needs, but in fact, your needs may be different than what they're hearing. So how do you make sure, or how do you know that they are really listening to you and your needs? Because that's crucial.
Well, that's a difficult one, because normally if they are on a high speed talking, I let them talk. I mean, it's also, I mean, it's an interchangeable thing if you have a discussion. I will not break in and say, by the way, I would like to now establish my needs. No, it's their show.
I think, I mean, remember, I'm probably representing 400 to 500 different clients with being a consultant, and therefore it's very difficult to just define it as to a single sort of need. And that's why I want to do more of the listening. But I do want you to be very clear about what exactly the product is that you want to bring today and why. I don't want huge amounts of background, but I do want quite specific.
Bernard.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's so important to establish, we discussed it earlier, is deal breakers. Are there one or two things that, if they don't exist in your offering, that it's just not going to work for me? If you have 3 or 4 different solutions, I'll give you one example where they don't have any liquidity for 2-3 years, let's say, then that may not be an acceptable investment solution for me. And you could spend 20 minutes telling me all the virtues of this investment profile, and I just can't touch it.
So really what you're saying is that right off the top, you rather have them listen to you and know what some of your parameters are and discover early in the process if there are any deal breakers, so to speak.
Yeah, very brief piece. And I agree with David. You need to show us your wares. You need to tell us what you've got and grab our attention, definitely. But there may be a couple of ground rules that you need to be aware of.
Okay. You know, we talked about listening, and you say oftentimes people don't really listen even though they think they are listening. And all of these people here have made, you know, a significant commitment to be here financially and emotionally and just the time away from their offices. What I want to know is, you know, how do you build that relationship? Because everyone would love to have an immediate return on their investment. But it's been my experience that's not the way it often works. So this can be very slow burning. It takes a lot of time. You have to build a relationship. And then eventually, if the parameters are right, the mandate can come.
Again, I suppose it's agreeing those next steps. If you can agree next steps here in Montreux, then you will have more success, I think, into the future. One, for example, in my company, we have an investment committee. New investment ideas are brought to that committee. And that means that you need to equip me to sell that. Grab my interest and equip me to sell that to the investment committee. If they, by vote, agree to take this further, then there may be an opportunity for you to present in a bit more detail to them.
3 words: education, education, education. Going on a similar line in property. Remember, what I'm representing and the lifeblood of consultancy, when you're talking to clients, is about ideas. And you're coming here to learn about new ideas, new about opportunities. You're starting a relationship with maybe a manager you've not had a relationship with before. You want some commitment to help on that education side, so that I can go back, I can help the other consultants, the analysts, understand why you should be put in front of the client, and also a willingness to help in educating the end client as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, working with pension funds, it takes quite a while. You need really time to introduce the asset manager and to really have the benefits on the table. But I think what's enormously worthwhile is to at least, to have a face-to-face meeting. You know the people, you get a feeling for their product, you get a feeling how they work, which helps tremendously with the context going on.
Of course, Bernard, you were saying that set some of the parameters for the follow-up process in this initial meeting. So if you only have 30 minutes, you have to set aside some time to, if there's a potential match there, how are you going to do this follow-up process, what needs to be done, and so forth. How can the managers who are here create value for you in terms of that follow-up process?
I think, first of all, one of the things that's always useful for me is a willingness to travel to Dublin to meet with our own team here, meet with our team in Dublin. So I think it's just really about recognize that this can be a slow burn. I will have to engage with a number of people, that you're not going to get a quick win. As David said, you're not going to get a win here in Montreux, or you're unlikely to. So to make sure it's structured, if you send me, remember, we have 3 days of meetings here as well. Your follow-up email that comes to us, if you can say, as agreed, I will send you, I will contact you, I will send on the following.
I'd go back to the answer to my first question, which is the educational piece. It's a willingness to follow up and explain why. There'll be another aspect of it, which is the more rigorous technical analysis, which will be done, in our case, by our manager research team that gets more involved in the very sort of nuts and bolts, but a willingness to educate.
How can the managers create value for you in their follow-up process? As you said, it takes a very long time.
I would appreciate a somewhat more personal approach. If we once meet here, and of course we meet a lot of people, and you're getting on an email list, and you're getting bombarded with emails, which is very often not very helpful to me, I think it's much more interesting to do a personal follow-up and find out what my needs are and what I can and cannot do.
Now, there's a balance between, what you consider being someone who is, a pest, and someone who is following up with you in a methodical, meaningful way. What is the best way for them to follow up? Is it email? Is it calls? And also, they want to make sure that they're constructive in their follow-up, so you can build a relationship. What about the timing of those follow-ups?
I think contact should be laid not very far after this meeting. I mean, the next 2 weeks or so. And I think that a personal call much more helps than sending automated emails, because we are getting, how many, 150, 200 a day?
I'd go the other way. My preference is email. I don't like calls. I certainly don't like mobile calls. I find it very intrusive. But a well-structured email with a definitive course of action is, because that can then get circulated around the whole of the team. So a well-structured with a plan email is best for me.
Yeah, I'd agree totally.
With David?
Yeah, David,
Okay.
yeah.
So it's interesting here, you have two different approaches, equally can be effective, but it's very important that in that 30-minute meeting, you establish how they want to follow up, and that doesn't always happen, does it?
Generally, I would find
Yep.
the people that we meet here will follow up with us. It's just, unfortunately, we do get bombarded by huge PowerPoint presentations, monthly emails, weekly emails of just standard material that is being sent out to every one of their institutional clients.
It's very interesting because Jason and I have talked with many other delegates in past summits, and you would be shocked at how many times they have said there was no follow-up or there was not proper follow-up. In fact, you and I were in Asia together, and there was a Chinese delegate there who said, I wanted to invest. I wanted to invest, but they didn't follow up with me properly, and hence there was no mandate. So it is crucial in terms
Yeah,
of the
but
follow-up. Jason, go ahead, please.
But
Yeah.
the actual thing about that, the actual investment manager that lost that deal was sitting in the audience, and a couple of days before that, he had a conversation with me and told me he wasn't getting any traction out of our events. So it was a little bit of an awkward conversation we had after that, but nevertheless, he was able to get reconnected with that person and do some business with them. So there you go.
What do you think is the single biggest mistake a manager can make in the follow-up process? Single biggest mistake?
Not being able to demonstrate how you are different. That to me is it. We have a lot of solutions available to us already. If you say, me too, you're not going to get any traction.
I would add just to what Bernard had said before, and this structured follow-up, in that if the follow-up is, please find attached 10 documents and 5 presentations, and leaving me then to read through all that, I just won't read it. I think the attachment of the presentation, but being very specific, and the key thing for you to pick up about is on page 5, because anything that can helps me to get through all that bump really, really helps.
So more specificity is always good.
It also shows that there's been some thought, rather than just attach 5 files and bang it off to every email address.
Gary, the single biggest mistake you think in the follow-up process is?
A constant flow of emails with enormous PowerPoint presentations and never ever a real contact after that. I mean, just a flow of emails. Well, nothing we can do with that.
Whereas you may have stated your needs in the initial meeting, but they don't always detail and get that right, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. Now, here's what's interesting in all these people up here, they've all done business. They've all had mandates out of the meetings they've had here. So what I really want to ask is, how did those relationships develop and evolve? We've heard it can be a very slow process, all right? And what ultimately makes you decide to give the mandate? Bernard. Yeah.
We just awarded a mandate to an asset manager in the last week, and I checked back, and I first met them here 3 years ago. So that's a slow burn. Now, there were some legal changes took place in the company structure, which meant we had to redo our due diligence again during that time period. So that's probably an unusually long situation. So I hope your heads aren't going down saying, does it always take that length of time? It really doesn't. But immediately, within 2-3 days of having met them here in Montreux, I remember a first-class email came to me setting out, here exactly what you said you needed. There was also, it was an alternative investment with a slightly unusual structure, and they did a lot of work to help us to understand that structure as well. And that was clearly laid out. It was tailor-made for us. It was not a general marketing document. It was very, very specific. And that helped us get on the road to getting our investment committee up to speed on it, and finally a decision on allocating.
So clearly they had really listened to your specific needs. Yeah.
I was going to answer in exactly the same way. Specific, the education aspect, and not just a case of being able to do it, but also then being able to deliver that client service, because from our point of view in working with clients, a good asset manager also enhances what we can do with clients, and that's more than just being able to beat the benchmark or do what you say. It's also being able to deliver the client service that goes with it as well.
Yeah, what ultimately makes you decide to give a mandate, and how did that relationship evolve? Yeah.
Well, of course, they run with a couple of other managers for the final call, but I think that the established personal contact we've made here enabled the provider to give me more of the things I really wanted out of this contract, and that really helped. I think that was one of the main reasons why they finally got the mandate.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, any questions from our fund managers out here to our delegates in terms about the process? It's very clear. Some like emails. Someone else might like a phone call. And in terms of the initial meetings, some like you to go through. Some rather have you listen a lot to what their needs are. So it's important to establish that off the top of the meeting. But if there's a commonality among all of this is that ultimately those who get the mandates, when there's a match, The things that have helped them to be successful is, one, they really listened to their needs. Two, when they did email follow-ups, they were very specific if they sent a document in terms of what was most relevant to the questions they had asked. And three, that the fund manager realized that this is a process that doesn't happen overnight, but you have to establish a relationship with the client and build from there. Jason, I want to turn it back to you, but there's one fund manager, solution service provider,
Yes.
who is from Standard Life. He signed 9 mandates, 9 in a 4-month period. He only shows 1 slide in a 30-minute presentation. And one of the things he really tries to do is build a personal relationship and really listen. Back to you for your final thoughts.
Okay, well, look, I think that's true. I mean, Stuart Hay is one of my longest clients the company's longest client from Standard Life, the private equity side of the business. He's not here. Alan Coffey's representing them this time round, but he attended the Private Wealth Management Summit last June, and between June and October did in fact generate 9 clients, and he's built a whole client base from attending our events and very rarely uses anybody else to prospect for new business. And whilst we're on the subject of open contracts, we've actually released 2 open contract partnerships. One was already gone. It was signed before the event. We have one available. And if any of you, I know many of you have been offered the opportunity, but if you're thinking about to do it or not, I'd like to pay special thanks to Advec Capital Management, one of our open contract clients who are here for the 10th year, AGF for the 3rd year, American Capital are here for the 7th year, Blue Bay Asset Management have participated here 11 times. They've signed last week for 2016. Prosperity have participated 11 times and have signed for next year and the year after. SL Capital are in their 12th year. And we also have Unigestion for 4 years as well. So we can facilitate that for you. In addition, over the next 3 days, we're organizing over 1,600 meetings. So it's going to be a little bit crazy. As Theron puts it sometimes, how do you like this madness? Well, sometimes it does get a bit crazy. Each meeting will last 25 minutes. You'll hear me ring a bell after 25 minutes, which will sound the end of that meeting. And that really is your cue to lock in the follow-up. 5 minutes after that, the team will bring your next meeting to your table. And whilst we like every client to feel they're the only client and get as many extra meetings for you as possible, as you can see with the size of this event, that is a little bit challenging here. So we're going to rely upon you as well to be proactive and to do as much networking in the networking functions, the lunches, the dinners, the cocktail parties as you can. And the team will be on hand to introduce you to anybody you want to meet. So please work with us on that. At a couple of events recently, I have noticed some sponsors finishing their meetings a little bit early after 5 or 10 meetings. In other words, giving up when they're not basically offering to invest in their funds. Well, there's 2 types of opportunities here. The first type is a direct opportunity. The next type is an indirect opportunity, and that basically means asking for referrals. Maybe you're not speaking to ideally the right person in that organization, or they have networks, they have contacts. Your products might not be suitable for them, but they could be suitable for people that they know. So work every single meeting that you've got to the bone until I ring that bell, and try and create as many relationships over the next few days as you possibly can. Without more ado, I know we've set up a lot of sit-down meetings with you to confirm your participations for next year. There's some reasons for that. We cannot pull off the excellence that we do year after year if we don't know who's going to be sponsoring the event. So it's very important that we finalize our numbers here so we can hand it over to production, operations, and marketing. And from an open contract standpoint, if anybody was wondering why we only have 20 open contract partners, there's a risk management situation involved. If all of the sponsors here were open contract clients, you could pull off the event at the last minute, which would leave us with a little bit of a risk problem. So we limit those for that purpose. I wish every single one of you the greatest amount of success, and if we can help you in any way, please let us know. Hope you enjoyed the session. Back to Todd.
I hope you have a lot of great meetings, and more importantly, a lot of great follow-ups. Thanks so much.